Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Chelsea. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and in today's video, I wanted to go over how to prepare for the EPPP parts 1 and 2. I have previously did a video of how to get your license as a psychologist in the state of Georgia, and it was a detailed explanation of the process from start to finish, where I went through some documents that I use to stay organized, keeping track every step of the way, and I included costs for every step of that process. And so if you haven't seen that video already, I would encourage you to go ahead and see that before you watch this one, because it's going to be a continuation. So in this video, I'm going to start off by going over the preparation stage, what I did to prepare before I even started studying for the EPPP, and then I'll go into the study materials that I used, as well as the method of how I studied. And then at the end, I'll share a little bit about my experience taking the EPPP parts 1 and 2. So starting with the preparation stage, I'm going to go over what I did to prepare myself for even studying for the EPPP. So in my internship program, the director over that internship shared a document with us that had a study plan, and the study plan was 2 versions. The first one was a 3.5-month study plan, and I think the second one was a 6-month study plan, and it just laid out the domains and which ones to study each week if you wanted to study for 3.5 months or 6 months and then take the exam. So I used that to inform how I created my own syllabus. This is a study plan, and it mapped out which domains to cover and how long to cover them if you wanted to study for 3.5 months. So this is what this document looked like, and it just went through each domain and the sections of them, the titles. It gave the pages, and they had a suggestion of taking a domain quiz at the end. And so I just followed this document here to create the format for my own syllabus. So the materials that I used were the books from AATBS. I attended a webinar or workshop, and I also reviewed the APA ethics code and their supervision guidelines for my study materials. And I took domain quizzes as well from AATBS. So these were all of the study materials that I used. So now I'm going to show you my syllabus in detail, the method of how I studied from week to week, so you can get an idea of how you might want to set up your own syllabus. So I tried to aim for a 3.5-month type of study period. I always started off with the most important things that needed to be done for the licensing process. So I have these overarching things up here at the top. And even though everything looks plain here, I had everything color coordinated, and it was bold and it was very elaborate. But I always created the things that needed to be paid attention to the most, big milestones along the way for the licensing process. So I would have that at the top, and then I would set up all of the things to do in my preparation phase. So I spent about maybe 2 months preparing for licensure, and as you can see here, I did it week by week and what my assignments were for each week. So when it comes to how I prepared, there are some documents that I use to inform me of the process. So this EPPP candidate handbook was one thing that I read before I even started using any of the materials that I got. I wanted to be informed about the process, and it was very detailed. I believe I got this from the ASPPB website, but you can just Google EPPP handbook for the latest version, and it just gave a detailed explanation of everything to expect for this EPPP process. So I read through this handbook to get an idea of what I would be doing. And then I also used this second document, which was something I found on the Georgia Boards of Examiners website. They did a study of licensed psychologists who took the EPPP Part 2 to get what their experience was like. And they just asked them some interview questions about how they studied, materials that they use, different question styles that they use to study. So based off of what was indicated here is what I did for my own method of studying. So as you can see here, some of them said that they reviewed sample questions, some did practice tests, and some highlighted test taking skills that they did. So these were things that I read before I even started studying. One of the recommendations was to look at previous test items from exams. So I found this document. I don't even know where I got it at this point, but I didn't even really use this. I'm gonna be very honest with you. But if this is something that you think would be helpful for you, you can try to find retired test questions to look at for yourself. So although I didn't use these retired test questions, I reached out to a friend for her study materials because she took her licensing exams before me, and I used the AATBS books to study for all the domains. So she shipped them over to me, and that is what I use to read and study. And I also did domain quizzes and some tests as well. So now I'm going to show you my syllabus in detail, the method of how I studied from week to week, so you can get an idea of how you might want to set up your own syllabus. So I tried to aim for a 3.5 month type of study period. So the first section that I started off with was the clinical psychology one, and I just followed that study plan that was sent to me before. These were the tasks that I did. I made sure to focus on one domain per week, and I would take notes. Usually I'm not a big note taker, but I think I took notes. But I would encourage you to take notes for each domain as you go. And I would recommend that you would do a domain quiz at the end just to see where you're at, but that's not what I did. I just read the domain books all the way through each week. So I did the clinical psychology one, then the abnormal psych, and then you can just see how I went along each week. So I did domain quizzes for 1 week, and you can see here the order in which I did them. I gave 1 week to doing domain quizzes, and I created a document to keep track of all of my scores. So I did 2 attempts. My first attempts were in October, and then here you can see I joined free webinars here and workshops here. They were free. I did that in 1 week. And then I continued with domain quizzes for second attempts. So I did this some months later. I retook all of the domain quizzes, and I only had access to them for a couple of months. So I kept track of them on this document here. And so for the first time, this is what my scores were looking like. And then for the second time, there was a significant improvement in my scores. And my goal was, or what I was told, is that you should aim for at least 70 or 80% on the domain quizzes to know if you're ready to take the exam. So that was my goal, to get at least 70. And after I looked at all of the domains, I wanted to make sure that I went back to my weak areas. So here on the syllabus, I took some time to review what were the domains that I had the lowest scores in. And so for me, I took notes It was the abnormal, clinical, and IO psych one. So I just reviewed the weak areas and just sharpened up my skills before I took my exam. So it was like a cram session that I kind of did the day before. I don't recommend you doing that, but that's what I did. And then I passed the part 1 of the EPPP. And then when it came down to part 2, I was told that, or I learned through the documents that I received, the things that were going to be of more focus were application based. So I decided to re-review the abnormal psych and psychological assessment domains, along with reading the APA ethics code and the APA supervision guidelines. So these were the main study materials that I focused on for the EPPP part 2. And then I took some notes for those domains as well. And I'll just share what those documents look like. I saved them here. So you would want to have the most up-to-date ethics code that you're studying from, and then the supervision guideline. So these were very important to read because a lot of the questions came from these topics. So those were all of the documents that I used to study and prepare for the EPPP parts 1 and 2. It was pretty straightforward. I usually wasn't one to take a lot of notes unless it was a weak area of mine because I have a pretty good memory. So essentially what I did was I read through all of the material that I could find on what to expect first when I was preparing. I used the documents that I had to create the syllabus that I was using, and I created documents to help me keep track of my progress in terms of how I was scoring on my domain quizzes. And so I would read through the quizzes that I did, like having the answers there, and I would go back and see what I got wrong and then try to retake it to make sure that I got it right the next time. And then after that, I went through my weak areas, which had the lowest scores, and I reread through those parts. I did more intensive studying and more note taking and trying to memorize the material, and then I sat for the exam, and that was for the EPPP part 1. When I did that EPPP part 1, I felt like my brain was being cooked. I'm not gonna lie to you. I felt like I knew absolutely nothing. It was as if I never went to school to study psychology at all. Like, that's how the questions felt. And I really feel like I made it by on the skin of my teeth, but it was very intense for the EPPP part 1, more than for the part 2. The part 2 was a lot more natural because it was application based. So it was a lot of scenario type of questions, but I felt like I was doing a lot of guessing for part 1. And so I was happy. I was happy when I saw that I passed. I passed both of them on the first time, but I heard that it is kind of like a similar experience of being like, what are you asking me right now for the EPPP part 1? But for part 2, it feels a little bit more comfortable because it's what we're usually doing, which is applying the theories and applying the ethics code and, you know, the guidelines and things like that. So if you found this video to be helpful, let me know down in the comments, and I am going to continue with how I prepared for the jurisprudence exam in the following video, as well as how I prepared for the oral exam. So if you're interested in seeing that, just subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.